Hello and welcome to the James Granstrom podcast, Super Soul Model Series, where I help people tune and tap into their natural state of well-being. This week, we are blessed to have our guest, who is Jean Paul Paloméros, who is a retired general in the French Air Force. He has served as Supreme Allied Commander in Transformation, and he's had a senior military post in NATO, and he has also served as Chief of Staff for the French Air Force from 2009 to 2012, and he's been awarded many military awards. We are blessed this week to have Jean Paul Paloméros with us on the Super Soul Model. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, James. That's my pleasure.
Thank you for being on the show. Really inspired to have you here because I met Jean Paul literally sitting by the pool, and I was really inspired by his hat. He wore a beautiful hat, and I pay attention to little details. And each day that we were out by the pool, which is where I'm living right now, Jean Paul had a new hat, and I asked him, "Are you a captain or something or other?" I thought it might be a vessel or something. He might be interested in boats, and he said, "No, actually, I was a fighter jet pilot." So I want to just lead into this conversation because we are really blessed to have this wonderful human being with us here today, who I find incredibly inspiring. Tell us a little bit about your background, Jean Paul.
Well, I was raised in Paris in a very simple, humble family, and as soon as I I was very young, 5 to 6. I look in the sky, and I thought that I would like to become a pilot, and I would like to fly.
Yeah.
And I developed this motivation, and I told my parents I would like to be a fighter pilot.
Wow.
They were very surprised. Nobody in the family was from a military origin, and certainly not any fighter pilot. But I told them this is my motivation. I read a lot of cartoons about the Battle of Britain, and that was very inspiring. Those were black and white cartoons where you see this brave British aviator fighting for the liberty, the freedom of his country, and gaining and saving Britain, by the way. That inspired me so much. And then I followed the track. I did what I could. My health was in good condition, so I could apply for that. And it happened that I succeeded, to my great pleasure, my great motivation. And I had the opportunity to fly in many operations and on many very exciting aircraft, as you can imagine, from the latest versions to the new generation like Rafale. For those who know, it's a new generation aircraft, really outstanding. And I learned so much. But one takeaway of that is there was the techniques on the one hand, but there was the people, and people were even more important. Sometimes the people outside of our world, people would say a fighter pilot is a lonely job. This is not true. You build a team, you fly with a teammate, you support yourself, and you are integrated in a larger world. So you need to be open. You have the engineers working for you, and very safely. I ever trusted my team. I never flew with any I would say hesitation, because I knew that I had a team behind me, and they have done their best to put together this aircraft and to maintain it.
Yeah.
So I learned that, and in the process I learned my aspiration for leadership, and leading the people, with the people, for the people. And this is how I developed this sense of command, as we say in the forces, of leadership, you would say. And that was another part of my career, which has been absolutely remarkable, in the sense of I met so many talented people, different background and different countries as well.
Sure.
We can come back on that as well.
Yeah. So what age? So you had the dream at 5.
Yeah.
Not everybody manages to have a dream at such a young age and follow through.
Right. It makes life easy.
It makes life easy, because some people like me, I didn't know what I wanted to do until like even my early 20s, I was like still unsure. I felt like my career hadn't, I hadn't decided what lighted up my heart and my passion. But from the age of 5, it's pretty special. You're able to look in the sky and go, I want to do that. So may I ask, what age did you actually join
I
the
joined the Air
military?
Force at 20, but
Okay.
before that, I went. I got my degrees, etc., in the public school, and then I joined military sponsored schools because it was easier, because it saved money for my studies, etc., etc. So I was engaged as a young military cadet, and then afterwards I passed the exams for the Air Force Academy, which is at the level of an engineer in aeronautics.
Hmm.
And then at 20, I was in the Air Force, and 3 years later, I started to fly. 23, something like that.
So how many years have you been flying for?
Well, all in all, I've been flying more than 20, 22, 23 hours. Obviously, the bulk of my operational career was between, I would say, 25 and 40, with a large focus on the 30th. You know, this is
Yeah.
the average age of a fighter pilot, 30, 35.
Yeah.
But which means that you get a lot of responsibility very soon, very early in your career. And that strikes me now with some background and looking back, say, well, I was 35 years old, and I was in charge of all these aircraft, all these people,
Yeah.
hundreds of people.
It seems like quite young these days, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Because I feel like the youth today feels as though the age is getting a little older to be able to be in responsibility. So 35, maybe even 30, 40 years ago seems like a
Yes, at 35, I was with my team, my squadron, more than 200 people, 15 fighter jets in Chad to support and to protect the Chad against Mr. Gaddafi, and etc., etc. So,
yeah.
and but it comes early, but you don't feel that when you are in charge,
Yeah.
because the things are coming like that. And
So one of the things that I'm inspired by with you, Jean Paul, is your leadership, right? So if you were put in an environment at the age of 35 to be in charge of a squadron, did you say of about 200 people?
yeah,
That's a lot of people
yeah.
to be 35 and in charge. What sort of training did you have to have? Because I think things that people can relate to is focus and training, and what we can do in our own lives to attain a level of discipline, because we all need to be leaders, maybe in a family, or maybe you have a business, or maybe you're starting a business, but at some level we all require leadership values and leadership skills. Where did you develop yours, and how do you think you developed yours in such a way that has led you through an illustrious career of being in charge of a lot of people and having a lot of responsibility?
Well, I never thought that I will get to such a level of responsibility, and I was not really looking for the level of responsibility. I have been looking on the present and the near future, saying, well, I must do whatever I can to achieve the objectives. I mean, the mission, to integrate the people, to make sure that we work as a team. You know, an Air Force is both a team and a family. You have the both part of that.
Yeah.
The people must be very close to each other. There are different ranks, this is true, but you must respect any people. Everybody has to bring, the man or woman has to bring something. And I learned that very early in my career. As soon as I start flying, and even in the Air Force Academy, I felt that my life one day will depend on those people who are on the ground. Will be the mechanics, the air controller, and all this chain of responsibility, this chain of expertise. And with, at the end of the day, the spearhead is the pilot, but the pilot is only part of the bigger system.
Yeah. So it makes me think of sport a little bit as well. I mean, when we are trying to set out to create harmony in the world or peace, or we're trying to create something bigger than just one person, we always have to rely on a team. And the one thing I was thinking of was Formula One, for instance,
Yeah,
the driver can drive, but
yeah,
it's all the mechanics behind the drivers
that's right.
and all the team that have to go in. So even though you may be the skilled pilot, you still have to rely on so many people. So there's a real level of trust that's required there. Did you feel that that was really important to becoming the person that you?
Well, the comparison is very good. This is a different objective, but
Yeah,
nevertheless, yes, you rely on others. And this is where I understood that if you are fortunate and enough to get a certain level of responsibility, you must build, I would say, trust, and not only you trusting your people that you are in charge of,
yeah.
but them trusting you as well as a leader.
So how do you develop that trust? What are the skills that you've acquired over the last sort of 40 odd 50 years of
You know, I
doing
used
this?
to take a say which says, "In life there is no love. There are only proofs of love." So when you lead people, it's not enough to say, "Well, this is fine, you are good," but you have to prove that in the day-to-day life, to be interested in what they do, and to make them happy and proud of what they do. So recognize the people,
Yeah,
recognizing every single people because they are bringing something and they are very proud of what they do. Well, they see you as a kind of God, if I may say so, because you are the man in the machine, you are the head, you are the chief of the Air Force, you are the
yeah,
chief of transformation. So they look at you as a very remote, but you have to make them understand that we are not remote. You cannot know everybody personally, but nevertheless, you must try to get the best feeling of what they think, what is their life, what are their concerns, and try to help them in doing that. Because and certainly in the forces, in the army, the people have a tough life, as you can see
sure.
nowadays. They are on permanent basis available. They must be, etc. They have their family, and it's not easy to compose with that, with their children, with their spouses. So you must take that into account and show that you are a human between other humans, but you are the leader and you assume that you are the chief. So you have to decide, you
Yeah.
have to make tough decisions. But if you trust the people and if they trust you, it makes life much easier. And I can quote a lot of examples of that during operations, for instance.
Yeah, I mean that's yeah, that I think everybody can relate to that. And I just wanted to say that I noticed like a common thread or a common denominator, which was you said that you had humble beginnings, and that humble beginnings makes you want to relate to people no matter where they are on any hierarchy scale. And it sounds as though even though you didn't necessarily ask for the leadership roles or desire that, you found yourself in that because you have a sense of humility that you've developed, that you figured that if I'm in charge of a lot of people, I want to care about these people, because ultimately I can't serve to the best of my ability unless these people are helping me.
Yeah, and taking really your role as as a support in their development, their personal development.
Yeah,
In my job as a fighter pilot, initially I thought, well, I will learn to fly an aircraft. I will learn perhaps to be part of a team. But what I didn't figure initially is that as soon as I got some qualification, I was in charge of the people, of my teammates, and to teach them, to learn them. This is part of how you build a common sense, discipline, shared discipline, because you see the people start at the bottom and they go even sometimes to the top, but they've been through all these different stages, so they understand exactly what it means to be a young operational pilot.
yeah,
What is your need? And secondly, I never made concession. I mean, because this is a tough job, and there are many tough jobs as well outside, but this is a tough job, so you cannot make concessions. You need to be very demanding to make sure that the people reach the level which is expected.
Yeah, this is a really good point. So you're actually always, from your team and yourself, demanding some level of excellence.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay, that can be tricky, I'm sure. How do you do that? How do you get that out of yourself? If you were by yourself, how do you demand excellence for yourself? Or if you were in charge of a few people, whether it's a large amount of people or a small amount of people, how do you demand excellence?
Well, you start obviously to lead by example as much as you can, and people must trust you, and they can accept mistakes if you are able to accept mistakes as well. But they want you to give them the vision, and a little bit outside of that, I would say the two key elements of building the future, would it be in the Air Force or in other organization, for me, is to give a vision, where we go, and hope. The hope to succeed, the hope, and the tools to the qualities, the tools that are needed to achieve this hope. And the people hope to be a fighter pilot, fine, they have to go through the step, but if you tell them this is how this is where we should go together. So I will try to support you, but you have to do your own homework. You have to accept this kind of discipline, because if you are not disciplined enough, you put the life of others at risk. And this is what we see on the.
It's really interesting that you say that, because whether you're in the military or any other business or organization, or you're an athlete, you've got to put your faith into training, haven't you? You've got to put your faith into the repetition of developing yourself, your team, everything to the highest possible standards. And I just see this thread throughout, whether it's in the military or whether it's in sport or whether it's in business. I just see that this character that you have to develop within yourself has got to have all these values of vision. You've got to have the discipline, you've got to have focus, you've got to have a hope. You know, it seems, like I've read lots of books, I've read lots of incredible leaders' autobiographies, I've met wonderful leaders, I'm a leader in my own way, and I'm just inspired that the same characteristics that are required are literally seemingly universal.
So, you're right. I mean, training is the key, and certainly for the forces. I mean, obviously, you don't go in real operation every day, fortunately. But we used to say you fight as you train, and the more demanding you are in training, and the more you are able to be successful in your missions, which means as well that. And sometimes it's difficult to make the people understand why we are so demanding in peacetime for training our pilot. Why you need them to fly low-level altitude, all weather, to do etc., on the day-to-day basis.
Yeah,
it's because of that. The day when they have to go to war, the day when they have to go to operations, there is no time for that. There is the stress. But if they have built those skills in training, in very demanding training circumstances, they are really able to achieve what they have to achieve. So this is the price to pay. This is true for an Air Force, but this is true in many domains as well. The more demanding you are, when you can really build yourself, you can build your competencies, your experience, and the better it is for the future.
So it's almost like putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. More and more and more will allow you to be able to shine when it's asked of you.
Yeah, never try to override or to pass over a difficulty. Let's face the reality. Nothing is simple. The world is changing. This is true. We have now the new technologies. We have a lot of questions. So we have to face that and saying, well, the technology are built by men, women. So if these men and women who build the technology are well trained and well qualified, they will build technology for the good, for the people or the human being, and not technologies by themselves. So you see, my job as a fighter pilot was a mix of human skills, human and technology. We relied a lot on technology, which are evolving on a day-to-day basis. And you are trying to get the best of the technology, but not to overload the pilot with multiple information.
Sure.
You have to be very selective. But this is amazing how the couple of the human being, the expertise and the technology, we can achieve with that
together. So if we just go back to some of the things that we see in our pop culture, you know, we've just had the Top Gun movie come out in the last year or so, and I remember having this conversation with you the other day. How realistic are the scenes, and how realistic are the actual aircraft in comparison with what you know, perhaps with your experience in, because you were a mastermind behind creating the Rafale military aircraft?
Well, the Top Gun is very realistic. It's very inspiring. Obviously, there is a part of the movie but the scenario. But all in all, it's like that, and you can feel those kind of values. You see, and this is the most interesting part of this movie, because you feel the value of the old experienced pilot, what it can bring to the youngest. You see initially him as an old guy, but he has logged such an experience that you have to build on that. We respect very much in my job. We respect very much experience. Myself, I've logged more than 4,000 flying hours, and you can say, well, if you can transmit a little bit of that to your young colleagues, that will be absolutely outstanding. And this is what you see in this film. As far as the aircraft are concerned, they are taking F-18, which is a good aircraft, not the latest, and some futuristic as well aircraft. It's part of science fiction.
What you mean in the end scene? Is that actually a real aircraft, or is it a futurist?
Well, it could be. You know, there are some black programs. So, we are looking to the future. So what will be the future? Perhaps one day we will take a kind of this aircraft and go into space. It's not so far away. You will see that coming in the next decade. So this is amazing. The story of aeronautics is an outstanding story. It started at the beginning of the 20th century. It went so fast. And when the aeronautics was invented, that was the First World War, and the air dimension took its place progressively, and suddenly it became absolutely essential. You cannot control the battlefield without controlling the air, and we see that in many conflicts of today.
So from the Wright brothers setting up that first initial aircraft to where we are now and you know, we're potentially going into space. So I just wanted to talk about this, the stress on the body, the stress maybe on the battlefield, the stress in our day-to-day lives. To put yourself in an uncomfortable position, how do you handle uncomfortability when maybe what's being demanded of you by your team, by the mission, maybe it's your business, what's being demanded of you by your family? How do you find harmony? How do you find that calm? What have been your skills that you've learned throughout your career that have helped you handle perhaps some of the most intense, stressful situations? And I know what's going on, what's happening in the Middle East right now between Israel and Hamas, and that very difficult period, and we wish peace in all that area. How do we handle that? You know, if we were an individual, and I'm asking, you know, from human to human, what's the best way to handle some of these really difficult experiences, and what can we do?
I think there's no single recipe, as you know, but I think if you are clear in your values, I would say, it helps a lot. I mean, if you know what you are, in my terms, you are fighting for, and everybody can have his own fight. If you know why you are fighting for, well, to take the lessons of my own commitment, I discovered progressively that at the end of the day, as a military pilot, I was fighting for peace. That was the aim.
Yeah.
To provide peace, to keep peace, and to make sure that the world was safer. And I started flying during the Cold War. I can tell you that was very tense. When the Cold War ended, I felt relaxed and say, well, we have achieved something. But the world is such that it was not the end of the story.
Sure.
Which means that if you know exactly what are your values, obviously family is part of my value, unfortunately, but the people are part of my values, and the respect for what our ancients have built. I mean, peace, democracy, liberty. This is my permanent day-to-day focus and I would say commitment, saying, well, what we can do to keep these precious things. And if you look at that, you say, well, we have a wonderful heritage. So it makes you, it gives you a lot of strength to confront all the difficulties you have in your life, saying, well, okay, today we have done something together. We have tried to achieve a better understanding between the people. And when I was the head of the NATO command, that was 28 countries at this time.
Yeah.
And I was working with these 28 countries to make sure that they were committed together to protect our values under a single organization, a wonderful alliance, the Atlantic Alliance. So in doing that, you must listen to the people for sure, because if you go alone, you don't go very far.
Sure.
And you must keep yourself balanced. Sport is an essential part of my life.
So what sports do you play to keep yourself in balance?
I used to play soccer, but I always like swimming, running, sort of things. So
yeah.
And I consider sport as an essential part of life.
Yeah.
At every level. It doesn't need to be a professional, but just to keep you fit, but fit in your head, fit in you. And obviously I like music, I like poetry. Yes, I try to write for myself, for my family. Everybody has his own hidden garden, if I may say so, and that's good like that. So no single recipe. You have to face the reality of life. But if you keep your values in place, what is important, what is crucial, what is essential, how we can achieve that, and to give the best to the people. This is the experience of a life. And now I'm getting to 70s, and I think this is the story of life. Life is very precious. Life is the best present that we have on this earth, and we must make the best of that. That's absolutely. If you look at the world like that, yeah, obviously there are places in the world which you see, you say, well, they will not solve that. Say, yes, but we have good experiences. We have managed to come out of 2 world war in Europe.
Yeah.
And now Europe is what it is, but it is at peace with itself. It is democratic. I mean, and it is able to provide the people a good social life. So let's appreciate that and make sure that we are able to keep that for the future. So if you keep this kind of values and vision, it helps you every day to do what you have to do. And
it's interesting because sometimes you can overlook why you're doing something. If you're caught up in stress, you're like, you don't go back to the why. And I think that's always a good reminder for why you're getting up in the morning, why you're going to work, why are you creating this business, why are you part of this organization, what are you fighting for, what is your heart telling you to do. And I think it's a really simple but very effective and profound message that we can all be reminded of. I just want to say it's been super inspiring talking to you, Jean Paul. Thank you for sharing your expertise. Thank you for sharing your understanding and giving us a little insight into your job and your illustrious career. And thank you for sharing with us like some hope as to why we do what we do in the world, and that the armed forces play a part of, but also what we can do as human beings, because I think we could all have the power to make personal change, which will affect global change in its own way. So thank you for coming onto the show, and thanks for sharing your wisdom.
I hope the best to your listeners and to yourself. I mean, we can build a safer, better world together.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, James.